Welcome to Table Talk here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. Yes, folks, believe it or not, in 4 days, we'll be commemorating our 13th year of doing the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show. You think I could get it right after all this time? Anyway, I'm Jeff Warren, and we're going to be diving into, on this Table Talk interview show this week, the upcoming NFL draft, prospects, scouting, who is not only going to be drafted, but like what the process is. And to do that with us this week, we have none other than the gentleman who is the writer and publisher of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. We have the one and only Matt Waldman. My friend, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on this week. I know it's a busy time for you.
Hey, Jeff, congratulations on the milestone. And
thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to get a chance to do this, and
Yes,
intriguing times, that's for sure.
it really is. It's interesting how the NFL draft over the years has evolved in many different ways. You're consistently noting that on an annual basis with your evaluations of college players who are heading to the NFL draft. And I really wanted to start our discussion off here, Matt, with the tight end position, because I was watching actually a recent podcast that you were on. I believe it was the Late Round Perspectives. And you and the host, you were talking about the tight end position, how things have really become more nuanced with this position over the past decade or so. Teams are operating in a more unique and distinct way than they were 10 years ago from a personnel perspective. And I just thought it was an interesting conversation you've had, because I've also been thinking about the fact that this is a position that continues to evolve. Year after year, there's different eras of the tight end position as well. How has your scoring that you've done at the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, how has that altered significantly over the years when it comes to the tight end position because of how this position has evolved over time? Give us your thoughts here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure, I would actually say that it's really the best way I would look at it is this. Let's talk first about how the NFL has evolved in terms of offense and defense, because it's a cat and mouse game, as we know, throughout. So, really, if you look back at even as far back as like the 50s and 60s, most tight ends were inline blockers who caught short passes.
Yep.
That's basically it. They were what I would call oversized fullbacks, who, if you put them in space, they could rumble. Mike Ditka was, I would still say, at his core, an oversized fullback, but he could go downfield a little bit more. And he was a very good route runner for what they asked him to do, and a lot of what these guys do, but he was the highest end version of that. But then we got into the mid to late 70s, and Ozzie Newsome and Kellen Winslow Sr. were really oversized wide receivers. I mean, Ozzie Newsome was a starting tight end for Bear Bryant at Alabama.
Yeah.
So you really saw the advent of the wide receiver playing a tight end role, and they ran more sophisticated routes, more wide receiver oriented routes, and the blocking was less emphasized. They could help double team. Maybe they could be a little bit more of a fullback or a space blocker. And you would see that really through guys and there were always unicorns who could do it all. But they were, again, few and far between.
Right.
And that's continued on really from the late 70s all the way through the about 3 years ago. So really the dominant philosophy has been, the smart philosophy has been Bill Belichick's, who always was trying to use two tight ends, which was the idea of, look, you draft your receiver-oriented tight ends early, you can get inline blockers who can catch later. But here's the thing. In the past 3 years, we've seen, before we get to the past 3 years, past 10 years, we've seen spread offenses. So there's been a higher emphasis of the oversized wide receiver, and they've been part of those 11 personnel sets where you get to see them run routes against man, and become matchup threats who you can move around the formation more in the way that, Bill Belichick wanted to do with Aaron Hernandez before, when they first drafted Aaron Hernandez, who was a a special player, but unfortunately, his life was not one that was, conducive for him to be able to have, a successful life,
Right, right,
unfortunately. But yeah, and Gronkowski obviously was also a unicorn in that respect. They were kind of like they were both unicorns, but one was more the wide receiver sized unicorn, and one was more the fullback oriented unicorn. But they both could do it all, and just one leaned in one direction more than the other. Well, teams were trying to copy this, but oftentimes they just wind up with 11 personnel because they didn't feel like they could get a strong enough receiver in the fullback, um, oversized fullback area to block
right,
and catch. So recently, because of spread offenses, defenses has reacted by spreading the field, being able to spread the field more with personnel that is undersized or smaller and faster. So when you have smaller, lighter, faster on the defensive front and also in the secondary, you then have the offense's counter. And so in the past 3 years, you think of the Detroit Lions, you think of Jim Harbaugh and what he likes to do, what John Harbaugh likes to do,
yeah,
what we've seen with Sean McVay last year with a lot of 12 and 13 personnel based sets. They're doing what is obvious, which is when you have these lighter defenses, you run it down their throats.
yeah,
Then you use the run once again instead of the pass. What the Eagles did 2 years ago before Patullo got in there, was perfect.
yep,
That's why you could see Saquon Barkley a mile away. And I mean, I've been on show. I'd host a show where for at least a year before he even joined the Eagles, it was like he should be in a team like the Eagles or the Ravens where he could be being 12 personnel. And if you thought DeAndre Swift had a good year, just wait.
right,
So I mean, but the problem is that more and more teams are doing this. And as they are happening, that we saw something curious happen last year and really the past 2 years. You look at the Green Bay Packers, Tucker Kraft, the way they use him, the way, you're a Penn State fan. I can see,
yep,
the way Tyler Warren was used in Indianapolis. I mean, what they're doing is they're having these guys either block or show the threat of being part of a inline blocking, and then they, leak out to the backfield into the flat. They leak into the flat, and there's nobody around them for 10 or 15 yards. They catch the ball and they rumble like a fullback. There's not a lot of route nuance needed for this. Okay.
right, right,
It doesn't mean that they can't run routes well. It just means they're not used in that capacity. Occasionally they're asked to work up the seam or win a jump ball, but their main job is to to be functional enough as a blocker in line so that they can then be the fullback on the leak on a designed play where the defense has moved away from there. And that leads to JJ Watt actually asking Tyler Warren, so how does it feel to catch balls where there's nobody within 15 yards of you? Because that's what a defender's going to notice right away. I commented on that a fair bit because I was a big Colston Loveland fan and
yeah,
talking about Colston Love and comparing him to Tyler Warren, and I think my face is still on post office walls, in Indianapolis and in Happy Valley, but that's okay. I mean, Tyler Warren fits what they want to do, but you could see that in the terms of the offense, like when the Steelers played them, they roughed up Warren and got physical with him early and stopped the run so that they destroyed the game plan. Doesn't mean that Warren isn't a good player, just means that the game plan can be limited to an
yeah,
extent. But then you look at guys like AJ Barner, who was a Indiana and a Michigan alum, who really wouldn't be mistaken for a top tier move tight end. He's basically a rebounder underneath who is excellent at running zone routes and catching the ball with people glued to him or hitting him very hard. But if you look at fantasy football, his production was enough to be a top 15 tight end last year, which in the previous, 8 to 10 years before this new dawning era, you wouldn't see him in the top 20.
yeah,
So you look at them, you look at Harold Fannin and how he was used last year, and there's room now for teams to go 12 personnel because there's more gaps in the running game. They match up better against these lighter defenders, and then you can deliver this. you can deliver these play action and misdirection type of plays that allow the tight end just to be uh, a big fullback. So what we might be looking at, and it's a theory that Matt Harmon's new hire Max Toscano, a former UConn tight end, you know, posed this year, which was what we might be seeing more often is that teams might start to value who are playing 12 and 13 personnel more often might be valuing more the big fullback rather than the big wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because the big wide receiver is still probably wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 in the offense. And if they can't block as well, then they're not as useful, even if their receiving skills were once valued. So I share all that to say that this year, what I've decided to do now that we've seen the trend for a few years is I haven't changed what I look for in a tight end. What I look for is still highly detailed. All I had to do was change the formula in terms of how I weight the value of it is that I observe.
Yeah.
So I've split it into two different scoring methods so that readers could see, all right, if you're an 11 personnel team, who are the players that fit best as the oversized wide receiver move tight end and what their value is. And that means that, you value route running and ability to separate at the line of scrimmage higher than you value the blocking. But then, and so route running and receiving are kind of on equal terms
Yeah.
and blocking was half the value. Now with the inline portion, I use an inline scoring system where now I doubled the blocking value so it's equal to receiving, but I cut the route skills and value in half because they don't have to win man to man nearly as often and win downfield. They just filter out. So now how that's changed for me is I can just say, all right, here's the score that you look at if you're looking for players who are going to probably get drafted in 11 personnel or used more as an 11 personnel tight end. Here are the tight ends that might fare better if they're used in a 12 personnel or 13 personnel look.
Yeah, a great explanation, folks. That you are always going to get a history of various positions, skill positions with Matt, and what a fantastic history you not only gave us, but where we are now in terms of the tight end position. And folks, we are going to take a quick break here, and when we get back, we're going to be really diving into how the tight end position may end up turning out for the Philadelphia Eagles in this upcoming draft. And we got some wide receiver talk as well. Who are some of the hidden gems in this draft? Stick with us. We're going to be back in just a bit. All right, we are back with our good buddy Matt Waldman from the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. You can head on over to rookiescoutingportfolio.com. And Matt, I know you're on a bunch of social sites as well. I know you're on the Twitter/X. I know you're over on Blue Sky as well. Feel free to let everybody know where they can follow you on social if they're not already.
Sure, at Matt Waldman on X is probably the best way to go there. Then I think Blue Sky. I post what I'm doing, but I don't post a lot there. It's at Matt Waldman RSP. YouTube, I have a channel. That's what I would
Yes.
probably recommend the most. Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room. It's been around for ages, and all my podcasts are available there. And you can find me on my site, mattwaldmanrsp.com.
He's the best in the business, folks. If you're into the NFL draft, specifically skill position players, you're going to want to follow Matt and all the work that he does. And again, the Rookie Scouting Portfolio is a fantastic resource if you are into diving into the NFL draft and various prospects. Now, Matt, I started off with the tight end position before our break because I know the Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to have to address this position at some point in the draft, given the situation that they currently have. Dallas Goedert extended on 1-year deal. Being a free agent and getting that 1-year deal, the depth not necessarily great. And as some analysts, of course, are mocking Sadiq to the Eagles. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen for a variety of reasons, but we've seen the Eagles over the decades now place real value. I mean, they have real value at the tight end position. Always have. I think us Eagles fans have been spoiled with it over the years. They've built one of the most consistent tight end pipelines in the NFL. tight ends from Brent Selleck to Zach Ertz to now Dallas Goddard, they've all had strong hands, high trust from the quarterback position, a strong ability to work seams and sit in zones. And all the while, they've been very versatile and very dependable individuals that the Eagles have drafted. Again, that pipeline, that tight end pipeline for the Eagles just hasn't really gone away. I'm a little bit concerned about where it goes after Dallas Goddard. So I'm wondering which tight ends, perhaps maybe in round 2 and beyond, might be that next tight end in the pipeline for the Philadelphia Eagles, in your opinion.
I think probably the best one would be Sam Roush out of Stanford.
Okay.
He's
Mhm.
6'6", 267. He has definitely adequate speed and good quickness and acceleration, and he's the best blocker in this class. Um, and at least when you include size as a factor for the tight end position, and you're looking for more of an inline guy who can also catch the ball and do some things that are maybe not quite unicorn level,
Yeah.
but closer to that. Maybe it's a horse that you can put a little party hat on and you still feel like you paint it well and it looks that way.
Right, right.
He's pretty good. Like, I would say the top end of his tier, the top end of his, like, range of style of play would be Rob Gronkowski. But let's say, like, Brandon Pettigrew, the
Oh,
former
yeah.
Lions tight end who was
Yep.
out of Oklahoma State, or I think it was Oklahoma. Pettigrew was a good tight end while healthy, a borderline Pro Bowl caliber player who could catch and run, work the seams, also do the dirty work over the middle, and win in the red zone. And I think Sam Roush could do that for you. He's a quick learner, and he's the best blocker in his class when you include size as a factor. So that's one. I think Riley Nowakowski is a little undersized in terms of his height, 6'2".
Yeah.
He's 250. He's an H-back type who can be compelling as a receiver. But if you feel like you could pair you can use a little more versatility with your tight end, more of an H-back type. He's interesting. Max Clare at 6'4", 246. A little bit, probably could add about 10 pounds and be pretty compelling there. Decent hands. I think he's good as a currently with how the Eagles have used tight ends. He could fit right in there and be kind of a player who can give you after the catch ability, who can work the shallow and intermediate ranges of the field and develop enough as a blocker that that may never be his strength, but it was never Zach Ertz's strength either.
True. Yes.
So he's kind of in that range. Oscar Delp is a very compelling player because
It's a name I've been
at
looking at,
six,
quite frankly.
yeah,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
6'5", and you know how the Eagles love Georgia guys. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
6'5", 245. He played behind Brock Bowers. He was a big prospect coming out behind there. He's from my hometown. Um, he's he has good quickness and speed. He has really excellent routes. He runs good routes. He knows how to get defenders who are playing over him or running at his back hip to basically make decisions where he can kind of run them off before his break, and get them to move in the wrong direction. And he does it in a very efficient, technically sound manner. The biggest problem that I see with him is that I haven't really seen him make contested plays. He
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
when he gets hit hard, the ball pops out. Now,
Okay.
he has good hands otherwise, um, and he's a good blocker. I mean, at 245 isn't really the weight you want to see somebody blocking in line, but he has sound technique. He understands how to earn position. He uses his hands well, moves his feet well. I think with added weight, he'll be just fine. I think he's the closest thing to Zach Ertz in this draft. And I think that he could aspire to become what Zach Ertz was with a little better skill as a blocker. And if he really blows it out of the box and shows that he can be a contested catch maven, maybe we're talking a Trey McBride aspiration
Wow. That,
out of
eh,
that.
yeah, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, that is what I think the Philadelphia Eagles are looking for probably in their next tight end again in the pipeline. And I think it'll probably happen in round 2 or 3 for the Eagles, and in terms of really wanting to get that next tight end for the future. But as we're moving along here, Matt, I always love talking to you about the quarterback position. We've talked about how critical pocket management is over the years whenever you've come on the show. And when we talk about pocket management, just for the folks out there, we're talking about timing, footwork, specifically in the pocket, spatial skills, just to name a few aspects of what pocket management is. In the past, you have talked about, Matt, how often the NFL struggles to really develop quarterbacks as it pertains to their pocket management. We've talked about on this podcast together before, and it's something where we still see those struggles to this day. And it's kind of it's astonishing to me at times, and also not astonishing to me when you look at what the quarterback position is and its importance and the evolution of it as well. Which quarterbacks have you seen in this draft class that have a really good grasp on pocket management, excuse me, that may translate well over to the NFL?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I would say that the NFL, if you're if you don't have the fundamentals that you need to become a decent pocket manager in the NFL by the time you arrive in the NFL, it's not gonna happen, and I don't think it has as much to do with the NFL as it just does is that the game at that this is the professional level, and when, there are certain jobs that you have in out in the world where once you reach that professional level, if you haven't developed a grasp of certain things, you're not gonna have a chance to do that job.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are certain, it's like medical school. I mean, like if you haven't cut into a body and and had certain types of experiences, in medical school,
Right.
you're not going to be ready to, I
You
mean,
probably shouldn't be cutting into bodies. Yeah.
exactly, I mean, you could probably get another job, but you're probably going to wind up
Right.
on death row,
Right.
if we're going to be morbid about it. But I think the thing is that, um, the difficult part about pocket management is that you have to develop the footwork and timing. Your eyes and your feet have to be tied together well because you need to process information fast, and you have to have very strong spatial awareness, and those things have to be there and well practiced and rehearsed at the level of football that you've been playing at in high school and college, where the defenses aren't as sophisticated at
Yeah.
disguising what they do,
Yep.
or or just the looks that you're unfamiliar with. So it's like you can't just like you just can't hop into. Very few people in life can just hop into a situation where it becomes that complex and just pick up on it if you haven't developed the skills and techniques. So there are people who, the people who both identify pressure reasonably well and can wait for that pressure to arrive within a certain distance and know when they either need to move away from it early or move away from it very late to maximize that. I would say the best combination of players who do that, um, probably in this class, Cole Payton out of North Dakota State
Okay.
is
Yeah.
someone who does that very well, but you have to remember that he plays against defenses that are not all that sophisticated. So there may be some bumps in the road, but I say that his ability to move incrementally, to be able to his spatial awareness, how he can reset and fire and deliver an accurate ball is good. Diego Pavia is strong in this area. The Wake Forest, the Vandy quarterback who um he's kind of he's a quarterback that I think that the NFL has been actively um, discussing what he's done off the field in a way that they don't normally do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so we'll see if he even gets drafted. But I'd say he's like Flutie Flakes with like Red Bull and vodka as the liquid that they poured into the bowl.
Okay.
He's a
Yeah.
fun player to watch. Like, if you ignore the off field or if the off field is overblown, he could be in the league for the next 12 to 15 years.
Wow.
Maybe not as a starter,
Right.
but as a high end, journeyman who can help a good team on the field if needed.
Yeah.
Other guys that also fit this, you know, I love what Fernando Mendoza does, but I would say his ability to manage and be accurate under pressure is going to get there, but it's not quite at the level as some of the other guys that are worth mentioning. Um,
Can I ask you a question
yeah,
just really quick with
yeah,
Fernando Mendoza? Because like I remember years ago, and these are two different quarterbacks in my opinion, but still similarities. I think when it comes to pocket management, I remember years ago we were talking about Zach Wilson, and I remember you talking about his pocket management on this podcast platform with me. Does Fernando Mendoza, is there a comp there with that in terms of the pocket management? Because I've watched, being a Penn State fan, I've watched Fernando Mendoza and I've
yeah.
seen him. I haven't done the analysis that you have done and the scoring you have done, of course. But is there a possible comp there at all, or am I just like seeing stuff maybe that I'm wanting to see?
That's a good question. From what I saw of Mendoza, I don't think it's that bad.
I don't think it's that bad.
No.
Okay.
I think he's patient with unblocked edge
Yeah.
pressure. He's good at rolling towards pressure when he needs to, and be able to then change direction late to make a throw. I think he has good footwork. He's willing to take hits. I think the thing is that he's someone that, if I look at his overall skill, he's better than Zach Wilson in the sense that Zach Wilson, his default desire to avoid pressure was to turn his back to the defense and roll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mendoza's default reaction is to climb, and that's a very good thing. I'd say that Zach Wilson, the comp of a player currently in the NFL who is like Zach Wilson is Kyler Murray.
Okay.
Kyler
Yeah.
Murray, Kyler Murray can climb. He doesn't choose to, and it's why he's no longer an Arizona Cardinal, if you ask me,
Yeah.
because you have to climb to stay efficient with solutions, like, for your second and third reads. Otherwise, you're forcing your receivers to reroute, and you're also stripping the effective protection that is there when maybe one guy gets through. And now you're creating a whole bunch of chaos, not just for the defense, but for your teammates. And you should be saving those opportunities because if the choice is take two steps forward and throw the ball to a receiver who is still on his break and he's moving downfield, that is far more efficient and more and a safer choice and a likely more successful choice than wheeling out of the pocket, changing direction 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
making people reroute, and then occasionally making an ESPN highlight play, but not being able to win more than 3 to 6 games every year because these plays don't come very often, and I'd say
Yeah.
Mendoza doesn't have that problem.
Okay. I think I still have some level of hurt in my heart from the Indiana Penn State game from this past year,
It's
which is
understandable.
probably why I just asked that question and the Zach Wilson comp because I wanted it to be that. Anyway.
I understand.
But look, folks, we are going to take a break. And when we get back, we're going to talk wide receiver position and who some hidden gems might be in this NFL draft with our good friend, Matt Waldman. Stick with us. We are going to be back in just a bit. All right, we are back with Matt Waldman from the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. Head on over to rookiescoutingportfolio.com. Great work that he does with his NFL draft analysis as he is scoring prospects. And we're going to dive now into the wide receiver position here, Matt. I believe you have Carnell Tate ranked pretty high, if he's not the highest scoring.
He's my
Uh,
top guy.
yeah, he's the top guy. I mean, first off, I wonder, is he a franchise caliber wide receiver? And then outside of Tate, who do you think could be at the top of this year's draft class in terms of that franchise caliber wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tate's easily the top receiver in this class, but it doesn't mean that he will easily be the most productive. It depends on fit with one of 2 players, and that's Mekhi Lemon, okay?
Okay.
But Tate is a franchise player. There was a player once upon a time that I know the Eagles, when they hear his name, they rue the
Oh,
day of the
sweet
decision
Jesus.
that was made. I
Sweet
know.
Jesus.
I'm sorry, folks, okay? But it's just the way it is. So, Carnell Tate, once upon a time, there was a trio of receivers at LSU who were excellent with Joe Burrow. One of them took the year off to get ready for the draft, and Jamar Chase,
Yep.
and he was considered the top guy, even though there are people concerned about taking the year off. Then everyone else seemed to be riding the coattails of Terrace Marshall,
Yep.
big, strong, fast. Ooh, he's productive. He's obviously going to be a franchise caliber guy. And he's a journeyman reserve because his route running wasn't as good. And you look at his craft, and it just was, people were more enamored with the athletic ability and the fact that the production, they missed out on the fact that he was bookend by two better receivers, and
Yeah.
that better receiver was Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
And, when you look at Justin Jefferson, his skills, he's not amazing after the catch.
Right.
You don't look,
Right.
he doesn't, he'll break a tackle, he'll
Yeah.
make a defender miss, he might make a couple defenders miss in the right situation, but you're not looking at him as a demon in the open field. He can return punts because he can field them well, but he's a guy that was someone that actually was more on punt return duty, blocking and tackling. He was also someone that, when you look at him as a receiver, was an excellent route runner, inside and outside, who can go up and win the ball. And that was his thing, is that he can make tight coverage catches. He could win the ball in contested situations where the ball wasn't completely accurate, and he was a good all around route runner. That's Carnell Tate.
Yeah.
Okay. You hear
Yeah.
people talk about Carnell Tate, and what they'll say is, well, Jeremiah Smith, look at all those big plays he had. And Carnell Tate only got one decent year.
Yeah.
Well, JSN was there. Amika Egbuka was there. When he arrived, Marvin Harrison was there. And if those guys are playing well in a certain role that Carnell Tate otherwise would have, unless Carnell Tate was so much better than them, like Randy Moss level better than them,
Right.
he's not going to see the field yet. In
Yeah.
the same way that, like, the same way that Nick Chubb would share time with Sony Michelle.
Yeah.
It's not it's Nick Chubb was miles better than Sony Michelle, as much as I like Sony Michelle.
Right.
But, or DeAndre Swift. He was better than both those guys, way better.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that DeAndre Swift can't have big years in the NFL.
Right. Right.
It's just,
Yeah.
so Carnell Tate just happens to play a role like that, where he was behind some of those guys. And then on top of that, you have to understand that Jeremiah Smith is a great speedster. So it's okay. Terrace Marshall outproduced Justin Jefferson, obviously. Didn't mean that Justin Jefferson was, at least for a year, it didn't mean that Justin Jefferson was a worse receiver. So we have to understand usage is important. And then on top of that too, you look at those situations, and I think that when he joins a team, he's going to need a strong quarterback to probably deliver his maximum value right away.
Right.
Egbuka probably would not have had the value he had if he was playing with the Cleveland Browns
Right.
last.
Yes.
So, but
Yes.
then when you look at Makai Lemon's more of a flanker and slot option, primarily a slot who can play some flanker. If you put him on a team that plays more 12 and 13 personnel sets, he's going to have to be the flanker.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to pick between the two, I'd rather go with Carnell Tate, who can probably play flanker or split end, and probably could learn to play in the slot too, because
Yeah.
he's a very strong route runner. Um, but Lemon really shines as a slot guy. So if he goes to an 11 personnel offense, that's the base set, he could really be more productive than Tate, especially if Tate goes into a 12 personnel set with Shador Sanders still learning the game, or Ty Simpson still learning the game, or Deshaun Watson, trying to show he's learned his lessons. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
Whatever, however you look at it, you could see how that might play out. But I'd say those are the two. I think that you could probably there's some guys like Casey Concepcion who are compelling, and you could see maybe being drafted earlier. But I'd say the closest thing, the guy that I would put in the same tier, maybe on the low end of the tier, as Malik Neighbors, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tate would be that guy. Whereas Makai Lemon is an instant starter on most teams.
Yeah.
Um, and at the very worst, a third receiver who can be productive year one, kind of in the Mika Egbuka type of tier, where it's like when you've got two really strong receivers around you to get off to a good start, that's great. Or everybody's injured and now you're getting peppered with targets, and then you have kind of some ups and downs, maybe due to injury and not used to having to play the grind with the injury, or you have other quarterbacks you're not familiar with. Now you're having to make professional level decisions and adjustments that you're just not used to, and your game can be a little more up and down. I'd say that's where Lemon is kind of in that tier.
It's going to be interesting to see where this wide receiver class goes, and who really comes out on top of it. Say 3, 4, 5 years from now. Excuse me. And to close us out here, Matt, as we do every year, you're gracious enough to come on the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show. I'd like to ask you about under the radar prospects that we should really be keeping our eyes on, those diamonds in the rough. And I know you get into this on other podcasts as well. Do you have a few players that you're really going to be honing in on that fit into that hidden gems and under the radar mold?
It's hard for me to want to call Skylar Bell a hidden gem,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
but he is someone that I see some of my peers ranking among in the lower end of their top 20, top 25, and
Yeah.
I think he's a much better prospect than that. And he's kind of he's an exception to the rule in the sense that he has some techniques as a pass catcher that are not what you would like to see. Quentin Johnston clap attacks footballs, and that means that he's using his palms and the meat of his fingers rather than the fingertips
Right.
to clamp onto the ball as it arrives, and that usually leads to fighting the ball and dropping it. But there are some players who've been exceptional in that realm who can do it well. Marvin Harrison Sr. was one of them. Um, Golden Tate was another, and Terry McLaurin is one right now. What they have in common is that two of those three could, or one of those three could actually catch it with proper technique, but just was as good at using the clap attacking technique. Skylar Bell fits into that. Also, all three of them in common is that they were good at being able to make those plays in difficult situations, and their drop rates weren't very high. And Skylar Bell also fits there. So he's one of those few exceptions to the rule that I usually don't go after,
Yeah.
but I'd say his ability after the catch is very strong. He's worthwhile to consider. Someone very late later on, two guys that are developmental worth considering. Eric McAllister out of TCU, 6'4", 194, can go up and get it. Very good after the catch, deceptive speed. His routes just need to be better because of where he played, and he's going to have to experience playing and reading the field a little bit differently than where he was at TCU. Um, Another one that fits kind of in that realm is um, Daniel Sopkowitz out of Illinois State, 6'3", 205, good breaks, good skill with the basics of route running, really more than the basics of route running. Like the things that you really need to do to be an NFL route runner, he does well. The things that you really need to do to become a starter aren't as hard to develop, and I think he'll be able to develop that. He has excellent hands in terms of acrobatic catches. Sometimes he drops targets where people hit him on the wrist and on the forearms. He needs to get a little bit stronger at the catch point there, but he's intriguing. That's one. If we're going to look at running backs, just for the heck of it,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like an extraordinarily strong class for most people say, but I think there's a lot of compelling guys to consider. Damon Claiborne is kind of a shady light type of player, if you ask me, and pound for
Okay.
pound, maybe the best playmaker on the board. in the running back class. Um, and he's someone that I would definitely keep an eye on. Very late or not drafted at all, most likely is Miles Montgomery out of UCF, who I think is the best pass protector in the class, and he's an excellent processor in terms of understanding how to set and create up creases. He doesn't need it created for him in the way that DeAndre Swift needed. While Swift is a good back, his processing is not unbelievably strong with certain looks. Montgomery's versatile and can do it all in that way. Robert Henry, Jamal Haynes, two guys that kind of give you a James Cook type of vibe in
Okay.
terms of what
Yeah.
they can do. Devon Booth is kind of a Khalil Herbert type of guy. And then, I've talked about Diego Pavia already. He's one that I'm kind of interested to see if he gets drafted at all. And then at tight end, there's a few guys. My favorite is probably Carson Ryan, out of BYU. He used to play at UCLA and Utah before BYU, and he is pound for pound the best blocker in this class. The way he sets up angles, the way he understands how to get defenders out of position before he even makes contact with them, is the best I've seen in quite a few years.
Wow.
He
Okay.
moves his feet well. He knows how to punch. He's kind of like Jake Ferguson. Think of him as a
Okay.
guy that they draft for depth. He he's so good that he's the backup pretty much immediately, and then somebody gets hurt, and he prevents that starter from ever getting back on the field.
Yeah.
Or if he does, they go, you know what? We didn't have much of a drop off, and he's much cheaper.
Right.
Let's go
Right.
ahead and get rid of
Right.
Dalton Schultz and
Yes.
use Carson Ryan and use Ferguson, but Carson Ryan, and he can catch. He's one of those guys that works his way open up the seam. He's one of those guys that works, finds a way to work open late
Okay.
in the play
Yeah.
and do it like as the ball's in the air. He's the recipient of trust throws. So he's a fun one that I would probably say. Also Justin Jolly, the NC State UConn tight end. He's 6'3", 241. Decent blocker for his size, more of a move tight end, and he lacks top end speed, but he has the best hands in this class. And he's a clutch player, and I think he's good enough that he can give you kind of a Jonnu Smith vibe.
Awesome. Awesome. Boy, what a great, great discussion. Folks, again, head on over to the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, rookiescoutingportfolio.com. Search out Matt Waldman on YouTube, on the interwebs out there. He's a fantastic follow. My friend, it was really great talking with you. I always enjoy our conversations. You are a plethora of knowledge and also probably have the best podcasting voice in the business, my friend. So I'd love it if you could come back and join us at some point down the road, maybe before the fantasy
Of
football
course.
season, because you dive into fantasy football as well. You can let folks know about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a staff writer at Football Guy since 2009.
Yep.
I've been writing about fantasy since 2003. So when you look at the rookie scouting portfolio, it's based on quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I do 164 position players this year. It's about 1,267 pages. It's bookmarked PDF, so it's choose
Yep.
your own adventure. It's easy to find what you're looking for, even though the volume seems that big. And there's a lot. It's football approved type of work because scouts and NFL people, it's one of the two most independent draft guides purchased by those people, according to recruiters I know, like Alex Brown, who used to recruit for Houston, Rice, SMU, Ole Miss, and now he's an Atlanta Falcons scout. So he knows what they buy. This
Yeah.
and the Beast,
There you go.
Dane Brugler's Beast is the other one. So his is King Kong, mine's Godzilla. Depends which flavor you're looking for, but because I'm a fantasy writer, I also provide fantasy takes, and I do a post draft after this where I factor in draft capital at the right time rather than trying to do it
Nice.
beforehand.
Yeah.
And then I give you lots of things like cheat sheets and analysis from a fantasy viewpoint. So it's great for dynasty leagues and for redraft. And so you kind of get, two resources for one price of $21.95. And most people will tell you, I get people write me pretty much daily going, you're undercharging for this, and I would pay twice as much.
Yep.
Sometimes they're even like, I bought the wrong thing. I've sell projections and dynasty rankings too, and I charge more for it because I just give them the answers, and I'd rather, and a lot of those answers are informed by what I do with the rookie scouting portfolio.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, "Look, just can you cancel access to the one?" They usually buy both, but they'll cancel access to one and go, "I'll buy the other. Just keep the money because I already am getting more than what it's worth." They want to do that half the time. So it is what it is. You can find it at mattwaldman.com. And, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it. It's
Hey,
always fun chatting
it
with you.
it's always great chatting with you, my friend. Again, folks, rookie scouting portfolio. Check it out. And with that being said, we are going to catch you next time. That's going to do it for us here on Table Talk.